To solve a 3 by 3 system of equations, here's an example. There are the three equations. What two equations are we going to start with first? Which two equations? And we label them 1, 2, and 3. Which ones are we going to start with? 2 and 3. So on 2 and 3, we have a -4 and a -2. What can I do to either one of these equations that would make the items out here be able to add to get 0 or subtract to get 0? What can I multiply either one of these equations by that would match up these numbers out on the left by the x's? You can multiply the third one by 2. If you just want to do it by a +2, that will give you two negatives out there on the left. So the first one, -4x minus 5y plus 6z equals 5. That stays the same, but we're going to multiply the bottom one, number 3, by 2. So we'll have a -4x plus 6y plus 10z equals 20. Now, if the signs are the same out here on the left by the x's, what operation do I use? Minus. If they're the same thing, you subtract. So when I subtract those two equations, these are gone. -4 minus a -4 cancels out to be 0. Then you have to go to -5 minus a +6. -5 minus 6 would be -11. And then you have 6 on the z's. You have 6 minus 10. That would be -4. -4z. And then you have 5 minus 20. That's going to be a -15. So there's the first one that we've created, and you want to write that one down and save it. You're going to need it here in just a little bit. Now we go back and look at what other two equations. Yeah, the top two, 1 and 2. What can I do to either one of these top two equations where if I multiplied it by something, it would give me the same item that's in the other one? Yeah, if I multiply this top one up here by 4, it'll give me a -4 out in this spot. So that's what we'll do. So on the top one, we're going to have -4x plus 32y plus 8z equals 44. That's from the top equation being multiplied by 4. And the second one stays the same. It already has a -4x beside it, so we just recopy that underneath of it. Now again, the signs are the same out here on the x's, -4, -4. So once again, we have to subtract. When we do that, the -4x's cancel out. And you have 32 minus a -5. 32 minus a -5 is 37. Then you have 8 minus 6, which is a +2z. And then you'll have 44 minus 5. That's a 39. So you want to keep that equation we just created off to the side as well. On the next page, you're also going to need the top equation, the -x plus 8y plus 2z equals 11, the first one. And we'll recopy those over here on the other side. So from the first slide, what we're keeping is -x plus 8y plus 2z, and that equals 11. The two equations that we found are -11y minus 4z equals -15, and then 37y plus 2z equals 39. Now what we have to look at are these two equations here. We want to eliminate a variable so that we can dwindle it down to a variable equal to a number. Now your y's out here have a negative 11 and a 37. That can be kind of rough. But look at the z's. You have a negative 4 and a 2. So we ought to deal with the z's. I don't think we ought to multiply this one by 37 and this one by 11, because that'll give you some really large numbers and the probability of making a mistake goes up. So why don't we deal with the z's in here? What could I multiply this bottom equation by that would give me a 4 in this spot? Yeah, multiply it by 2. So we'll multiply this bottom one by 2. Keep the middle one the same. It already has a 4 in the z spot. And then on the bottom, we're going to multiply through by 2 to get 74y plus 4z equals 78. And since we have a negative 4z and a positive 4z, what operation do we do to get them to cancel to 0? Addition, yes. We'll add. And the first thing here is negative 11 plus 74. Negative 11 plus 74 is 63. The z's cancel out to 0. And then you're going to have negative 15 plus 78. That's going to be 63. So this one works out pretty neat. If you divide 63 by 63, you get a nice answer of y equals 1. And once you have that, you can now go back and knock out this one and replace it with y equals 1. And that's what we'll do over on the other side, and then start solving backwards to get the answer. So what you should have left over is negative x plus 8y plus 2z equals 11. And then the middle equation is negative 11y minus 4z equals a negative 15. And we just found y to be equal to 1. So there's the wedge formation that we need, and we can start solving backwards. So what you want to do first is plug in y equals 1 into this spot. So that's negative 11 times 1 minus 4z equals negative 15. And negative 4z equals negative 15, and then you'll have the opposite of this. Over here, that's a negative 11. We're going to make it plus 11 on this side. And when you simplify that, that's a negative 4. So clearly the answer would be 1. Negative 4 times 1 equals negative 4. So we have z equals 1 and y equals 1. The last thing you have to do is to go back here to the top one and plug in y and z. And then solve for x. So it should be negative x plus 8 times y, which is 1, plus 2 times z, which is also 1. And then simplify that. That's negative x plus 8 plus 2 equals 11. And of course this 8 plus 2 is going to be a 10. So we'll come up here, negative x plus 10 equals 11. Negative x equals 11 minus 10, which is a negative 1, but since you have that negative sign on the x, it's going to change the sign of what's over on the right. So you end up with a 1. In this case, all answers were 1. 1, 1, 1 is the solution for that. Yeah, that should have been a positive 1 right there. And then that makes the answer negative. So x is a negative 1 on that one. Negative 1, 1, 1. On this part here, you should multiply this one by 3 and then this one by 8. and come up with 24x minus 3y minus 15z equals a negative 6. And then on the bottom, a negative 24x minus 16y plus 8z equals, and let's see, 4 14s would be 56, so that should be a negative 112. So you can compare that with what you have. And since we have opposite signs out on the left, you're going to have to add those together and cancel them out. So negative 3 plus negative 16 is a negative 19. And then negative 15 plus 8 would be a negative 7. Negative 6 plus a negative 112 is negative 118. So if you have that for your first generated equation, then you're on the right track. For the top two equations, you're going to have negative 2 and 8. So the top one should be multiplied by 4, and you come up with a negative 8x plus 20y plus 8z equals 96. And the second one stays the same, 8x minus y minus 5z equals a negative 2. So if you add those together, the 8's cancel out, and you'll end up with 19y plus 3z equals 94. So you should hold that one as well. 19y plus 3z equals 94. And notice that works out pretty neat because you have a 19y there and a negative 19y there. You already have a negative 19 and a positive 19, so if you add them together, they cancel out. Negative 7 plus 3 is negative 4. And then a negative 118 plus 94 is going to be a negative 24. So if you divide negative 24 by negative 4, you come up with an answer of 6 for z. So we have the wedge formation that you need. If z is 6, then we can go back and do negative 2x plus 5y plus 2z in the first equation spot equals 24. And then your second one is negative 19y minus 7z equals a negative 118. And we just found z equals 6. So you can solve backwards from there. To finish this off, you're going to plug in z into the equation above it and have negative 19y minus 7 times 6 equals negative 118. So negative 19y minus 42 equals a negative 118. Negative 19y equals a negative 118 plus 42. And right off the top of my head, I can't figure that one out. So negative 118 plus 42 comes out to be a negative 76. So if you divide negative 76 by negative 19, you'll come out with, I believe, a 4. So then you're going to go back into this equation, negative 2x plus 5 times y, which is 4, and plus 2 times z, which is 6, and then solve for x. Negative 2x plus 20 plus 12 equals 24. So if you add these together, you'll get a 32. Negative 2x plus 32 equals 24. And a negative 2x equals 24 minus 32. And that should be a negative 8. Divide negative 8 by negative 2 to get 4. So it should be 4, 4, and 6.